Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our second question time for this year's officer elections. If you were here last night, you would have seen us meet the candidates for the position of Welfare and Campaigns Officer, Postgraduate Officer, Education Officer and Sports Officer, which means tonight we have just 3 more to go, and they are Societies, DDO and President. Now, for those of you who haven't been to one of these sessions before, and I'm sure many have, just a sort of a brief summary of what tonight is about. It's just a chance for you to meet all of our prospective candidates and sort of work out who would best represent what you want, obviously ahead of the vote opening on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock. Also, just to point out about the vote on Wednesday at 9 o'clock, just some exciting information we have. For the first time ever, there'll be live voter turnout data published on the website. And what that means is that you'll be able to see as and when every person votes, and also there'll be a breakdown of how people have voted and the proportions, so in terms of gender or course or other bits and pieces like that. So that's rather exciting too. Obviously, you can go online and read all the manifestos in full at your leisure, but what we hope to do tonight is sort of give you a snapshot of what all the different candidates are proposing to do. Just a little bit on the format of tonight. We're here sort of 5 to 7. We've obviously got the 3 positions to get through. So we've got half an hour on each of the first 2 positions and 40 minutes on President. How it's going to work is we've got each of our candidates. They're going to have the opportunity to sort of address you and let you know what their campaign is all about. Our first 2 sabbatical officers will have 2 minutes to address, whereas the President has got 3 minutes to address. And then after that, we've got a set of questions that have been put together by the Raw News team and the Warwick SU that will be proposed to the candidates. And then after that, we'll open the floor and you can have your say and ask as many questions as time allows. So that's how it's going to work tonight. Obviously, we do have to stick closely to time, so apologies in advance if we don't get through all the questions. So we begin with Societies Officer tonight. Just a little bit on the Societies Officer. So it's the main point of contact, providing support, advice and guidance for all Society executive members. They're to work with societies to promote their events and contribute to their long-term strategies and policy decisions to ensure members get the best value and experience possible. And we've got our 3 prospective candidates here. We have Marissa, Farah and Matthew. So a round of applause for all our candidates tonight. Okay, so we are going to begin with opening addresses and remarks, and so there's 2 minutes for each candidate, and we're going to start with Marissa.
Hi everyone, my name is Marissa Beattie, and the big idea behind my campaign is that things are going to get better with Beattie. So first of all, I'm just going to run through some of my experience. So I am chair of the Society's exec already, and I've been doing some great work with that exec this year. I'm also a trustee of the Students' Union, which means I sit on the board at that level and look after charity governance. So I've got a real insight in how things work within the SU that a lot of students don't have that sort of insight. I've also been on the law exec for the past 2 years as publicity officer and career summit coordinator. So, I've got real hands-on experience in a big society on campus. So I've really got to know what sort of problems societies face and challenges that can be overcome. In terms of what I want to achieve if I were to be elected as Societies Officer, one of my main aims is to create a Warwick SU app which will help societies to better interact with their members, because I think a lot of people are members of societies but not necessarily as engaged as they could be or might want to be. So the idea behind that is that societies can send notifications about events directly to people's smartphones, and even if they were doing a social in the terrace bar, for example, people could send through a drink deal straight to people's smartphones, and they could just show it to the bar and get their deal rather than doing raffle tickets like they do a lot of the time. One of my other main ideas is to increase collaboration between societies. It's something the exec's been working on quite a lot throughout this year. We've just started to realise that so many societies have so much to offer each other, whether it's, Warwick TV or Raw offering their video skills and recording skills to others, like performance societies, for example, putting on shows. I also want to just increase engagement with societies more generally. I think there's maybe a lot of inclusion and accessibility issues that are cropping up within societies, and what I really want to do is review this with the part-time officers, and just really work out what's working well for societies and what's not working well, and kind of form a best practice so everyone can be involved.
Thank you, Marissa. Thank you very much. Yes, round of applause. Just for some clarification, I know that bell was quite loud. Just to let you know, what that means is there's 10 seconds left, just so to wrap up. So obviously here there's 2 minutes, but when we have our questions, there'll be 30 seconds. So it just means wrap up, just because it's quite loud and scary. Farah.
So, here we go. 60 seconds for serious socks. It sucks we don't have longer, but let's introduce one another. I'm Farah, RAG president, resident of the Students' Union, used to its unusual doings, with a precedent to set as new socks officer. So let's get on to manifestos, the bread and butter of elections. Expect from me a series of serious points. A digital societies fair. For fresh feeling, contemplative, inundated, totally intoxicated, never miss a society. Catch them all online again for free. Rate my sponsor, an online forum great for execs to inspect prospective partners and not waste half their time in the darkness. Activity points for society achievements. Receive a brother from the oven, from your brother from another mother. So many other ideas too. So don't be delirious. I'm serious for socks. Would I wear this sexy moustache if I really thought not? I wear this banner with pride. So vote Farah for socks come elections time. So, hi guys, I'm Farah and I'm serious about being your society's officer. As you can see from my manifesto online, I have a serious 6-point plan ready to make our great societies here at Warwick even greater. So serving as RAG social sec and then finally president, I've consistently aimed high, achieved a lot, and really put my heart and soul into everything I do here at Warwick. How can I sum this up? Societies, they're serious business. That's my tagline. What I really want to do is prove to everyone that you can achieve a lot beyond your academia, and through my manifesto, I want to consistently reward and support people in everything they do in their society endeavours. So please, guys, vote serious and vote Farah this election's time.
Thank you very much, Farah. And finally, opening statements from Matthew.
Hi guys, my name is Matthew Bennett and I'm the current president of the Pole Dance Society. When I joined university, I never saw myself becoming anything like this, and I would have never seen myself standing here. I was welcomed into this society when it was just me as one of the only male members not on the exec. In fact, I was the only male member not on the exec. Since then, the society has grown to 300 people, and that's under my leadership. On the exec, we're now 50-50 in gender representation, and it's just got bigger and better. And I want everyone to be able to experience this. And I want to use the things that we use in the Pole Dance Society to increase all engagement throughout the SU. I know that there is a way that we can help to support the societies, to support their members, and even to impact students that aren't necessarily members yet, to show them that we can put on club nights, perform at society events, and things like that. Onto my manifesto points, I have 3 big main points. The most important of which is I want to set up Warwick's first ever sponsorship fair. This will be in the same lines of a careers fair, where we bring in companies onto campus that are potential sponsors, get them to talk face to face with societies, and let them know and work out together the ways that they can help and benefit each other. The next one is, of course, making more of the spaces on campus. With the new builds going up, this means that there's more study space, but there's still not enough room for societies to hold their debates, their rehearsals, their general meetings. There are so many rooms, for example, over in the Panorama Suite, and all the rooms over in the Roots learning spaces and the Roots building that aren't used efficiently enough. If we could open those up and make them bookable to more societies, it would be better for everyone. So thank you very much, and make it mapped for socks.
Thanks very much, Matthew. Okay, so now we move on to the set and predetermined questions. These have been put together by the Raw News team and approved by Warwick SU. Obviously, if you've got anything that you want to question the candidates on, or anything that in their manifestos or anything else, think of it now and we will come to those questions very shortly. Okay, so we'll begin with these questions here. So the first question tonight: there is a significant lack of rehearsal space for performance and music societies. What will you do to change this? And we start with Marissa.
Yeah, so that's a big problem I face. So I'm also a teacher for CMD, which is technically a sports club, but we also face this problem quite a lot. So one of the big things I've been doing, I've been talking to Andy Parker, who's part of Unibrass, about the music centre, and we've been talking about the ways to make that more accessible for people, and potentially talking to the VC about how the whole building can be changed to make it more space for students. Also, again, just making more rooms available only for performance societies after a certain time in the evening for rehearsals.
Thank you, Marissa. I have to stop you there. Thank you very much. Farah.
Yeah, just to echo a lot of stuff that Marissa was saying, I've done a lot of performance stuff. I'm a theatre student. I think it's fantastic that we have the facility, the art centre, but it's so expensive to rent places out and really utilise that facility. So we should really work with the art centre to sort of lobby them to get cheaper discounts so that we can put on our great stuff in these amazing facilities that we already have.
Thank you, Farah. And finally, Matt.
A huge problem is that societies don't know where best to look for the rooms. At the moment, the online room booking systems are divided between the different departments, and if we centralise that into one place, then we can make sure that all rooms are used efficiently. Also, I mentioned using the spaces in the Roots building more efficiently, using spaces that you wouldn't necessarily have thought of. There are so many rooms in the music centre that are just empty storerooms with nothing in them that could be used for private rehearsals. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next question tonight. There is still a lack of inter-society cooperation. What will you do to ensure stronger relationships form between societies? And we start with Farah.
So I'd really utilise SOX Convention as a key opportunity to promote inter-society relations. At the moment, we have all the execs come together, they then watch the Amazing Societies officer, but then they leave again, and that's not the way we should be doing it. We should be utilising that time to build bridges between one another, really network together so that we can pledge to do things in the new year and work together as a team. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Farah. Matt?
This is something that, as president of a performance society, I have quite a bit of experience with. We're constantly working with other performance societies and even academic societies to perform at their events and balls. I actually set up one of the first ever PEB bar crawls involving pole, echo, belly and breakdance. Sorry, nearly forgot me there. So yeah, I just want to make sure that there's an online forum for all societies where they can interact easily.
Thank you very much. And finally, Marissa.
Okay. So I think the best way to get societies to collaborate from an early on stage is by doing it at the exec handover days, really getting those conversations started and orchestrating some conversations between societies about how they can collaborate. Another really cool way of doing that, I think, is to introduce like an online forum like the Red Paperclip website that propped up a few years ago, so that societies can show what services they have to offer one another and can sort of trade that way.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next question tonight. Societies have faced big issues regarding charity fundraising. How will you make the process of fundraising easier? And we're going to start with Matt.
So there has been a lot of progress this year in cutting the red tape on charity fundraising, and we can push that even further and make it even better. A big thing is that a lot of societies find it really difficult to work out how is the best way to do it, and they have to go through and send so many emails to various people to find which is the right avenue to go through, where you are allowed to campaign and where you are allowed to do the bake sales. If we make sure all of that information is readily and easily available and clearly able to read, then that will be the best way to do it.
Thank you very much. Marissa?
Yeah, so as a trustee of the Students' Union, I sort of come up against this charity law barrier quite a lot, and it's definitely something that I think societies just need to know more about. To echo Matt's point, I think it's just really getting the word out about what the barriers are and how we can overcome them. There's no simple solution to it. It's really just letting people know what the problems are and the clear ways that they can fundraise for charity.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Farah.
Again, RAG President, this is something incredibly close to my heart. What I would do first and foremost, we have the most incredible fundraising culture at Warwick, but it's not represented. What I mean by that is, on the website, we do not have a fundraising tab. It's madness. What I would like on there, as well as celebrating what we do, having specific exec resources for fundraising on there, because I agree, charity law, it's a nightmare to navigate, so we need to work that out.
Thank you, Farah. Okay, we move on to our next question. What will you do to encourage people to use the SU and to promote events at the SU? And we start with Marissa.
Sure. So it is a bit of a difficult thing. Again, I think it's just an engagement problem as well. I think by introducing an app, you'll naturally get more people engaging with things on campus, because if it's on their phone and something's happening in the SU, then why wouldn't they go along? In terms of using the resources available in SUHQ, I think that's maybe just improving training from an early on stage at handover and getting to introduce those people from when they come onto the exec.
Thank you very much. Farah?
I definitely think the answer to this is collaboration. Collaboration is key. A lot of the times these facilities, even coming from a big society like RAG, renting out the copper rooms for £600 a night is extortionate. So therefore we need to really work together to build an effective event and one that is going to be financially sustainable. So it means that we can put on these great events and do it in the very heart of our university, on our campus, on our SU.
Thank you very much, Farah. And finally, Matt.
So there are many ways that you could increase the engagement in societies, one of which is actually making the Freshers' Fair bigger and better by bringing on food stalls, like we do on the Casual Wednesdays. Bring all those food markets into the Freshers' Fair. It'll increase student engagement so much, because who doesn't love food? Secondly, a thing that works really well in my society at the moment is every first session is free. If all societies adopted that so that people could just drop in whenever they like throughout the year, that would work really well.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, next question tonight. Because the SU has a capacity for circle, it means some societies have to circle in the Roots building. Pints of purple are more expensive here. Will you do anything about this? And we start with Farah.
Yeah, this is a difficult issue, especially with pricing. At the end of the day, our union is a charity, and I think they do have competitive prices, so we do need to bear that in mind. However, with regards to bringing more societies into that strong circle culture, a lot of, it's prominent in sports. We've done it before in RAG, where we've opened up the union here. We've also done outside circles as well. So just bringing more people into the union, and then they can still use the facilities and get their all-important purple.
Thank you, Farah. Matt?
I think that the best way to do this would be to lobby for standardised drinks prices, even if it was only for that Wednesday evening and for specific society events. That way, everyone wouldn't need to choose between Terrace Bar, between Copper Rooms, between Roots. As long as anyone had a space, which is so important, then they would be able to enjoy the same experiences.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And finally, Marissa.
Yeah, so given that Roots is university run, I think the conversation needs to be had with the university and with their prices, and they need to match the SU prices to make it fairer for students. However, I think the problem that really needs to be overcome is that there's such an imbalance between drink deals on alcoholic drinks and non-alcoholic drinks, and I think that's something I'd want to tackle first across the SU and university outlets.
Okay, thank you very much, Marissa. Okay, this next question is actually from the online system that was set up. The question is, there seems to be a clear trend of more and more societies running conferences, forums and summits. Do you feel you're the best candidate to continue supporting this trend, and if so, why? And we start on this one with Matt.
So speaking as somebody who has compared and organised national competitions for universities across the UK, I know what it's like to organise these things, and I know the deadlines that are in place with the SU, and I would work my hardest to make sure that societies know these deadlines. So many times they kind of put off the organising because they don't know the deadlines that are in place, and I want to be making sure that they don't make any mistakes like that by going up to them and asking them what they're planning.
Thank you, Matt. I've got to stop you there. Marissa?
So I think I'm the best candidate in that respect is that I've been the Careers Summit coordinator for the Law Society this year. It's the first time we've ever done a Careers Summit or any summit in the Law Society, and I organised it by myself, had 35 speakers come along and sold over 100 tickets for the event. So I really know what kind of things go into that and how much hard work goes into it, and I really think the university could do a lot to help societies to put on more events like that.
Okay, and finally, Farah.
I think summits are incredibly important because it gives you that platform for student voices to be heard and interact with external partners. One of my manifesto points actually is really utilising YouTube to create a digital handbook so that we can have engaging videos to explain really effectively and briefly sort of what are the main points of how to put on a summit and things like that. Also really to safeguard the execs that work so hard on these events, as I'm sure Marissa knows. The union needs to work.
I've got to stop you there.
Okay,
I'm sorry. Okay, the next question tonight. Will there be a lecture-free Freshers' Week? And Marissa, we start with you.
Will there? I definitely think there should be. I know Isaac's done some great work with this year, and he's made some real movements in it, so it'd be a great thing to try and continue that with the rest of the sabbatical team to try and lobby for that still. There's not really much to say to that. I think it's in progress, so I'd hope so.
Farah?
Yeah, 100%. I think, as I've reiterated before, societies and sports are so important to the personal development, the well-being, and the general university experience of students. So we need to give people those orienting times, especially that partner with my idea of a digital freshers fair, giving people those continual opportunities to learn about what you can do beyond your academia. It is so, so important. So I would totally champion having a week 0 freshers week.
Thank you, Farah. And finally, Matt.
This is a particularly important issue given the decision to move WUSAF to term 1 next year. At the moment, there will not be enough rehearsal time before the university term time starts for people to properly engage and rehearse for incredible performances and properly represent the performance societies and all other sports clubs across campus. How else are we going to engage the members unless we throw on an incredible event with a lecture-free time to rehearse?
Thank you, Matt. Okay, our next question tonight. How do you intend to make the Freshers' Fair better? And we start with Farah.
So I'm all about the digital at this point. I really think we need to firstly build up the hype, so have a pre-fair trailer, sort of 250 societies, one opportunity, be there, be square, just to share in all the Facebook events to really get the engagement levels going. Then secondly, on the fair, I want to make it really, really engaging, so have a photo booth so you can say sort of, I've been to the Freshers' Fair, having vlogging, I'm more than happy to do that, and that coupled with the idea of the digital Freshers' Fair after the event's been launched to really make sure that anyone that wants to get involved knows what they have to do to be a part.
Thank you, Farah. Matt?
So I've already mentioned that I want to bring the food stalls into university for the Freshers' Fair so that all of the students are already moving out and about and that they know what's happening. We need to increase the awareness of it on social media and make sure that it's posted on all the hall groups and make sure that all the students' halls of residences as well are shouting about it. We also need to make sure that second year and third year students, as well as the postgraduates, are made aware of it as well.
Thank you very much. And finally, Marissa.
Yeah, so I think this is something the app could actually be used for quite effectively if we introduce QR codes for each societies, and when people are going around for the Freshers' Fair, they can literally just put up their phone and join a society right there on their phone rather than getting the sticky labels that people stick on everyone. So that's one way of making it much more effective, and people will literally just do it there and then. I also think just making sure that the space is distributed more fairly. I don't think societies get to represent themselves equally enough at Societies' Fair sometimes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that ends the sort of set questions now, so we are going to open it to the floor. So if you do have questions, if you could pop your hands up, and we will come round, Mike will come round with a microphone. We start just down the front here, Mike. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Mems. I'm currently co-president for the Warwick Anti-Racism Society. It's quite saddened to see that no one spoke about Black History Month, which was one of the most important events for a lot of people of colour on campus. How would you make sure that there is funding for liberation societies? I know some of you mentioned KPMG, organisations such as that, but with liberation societies, our funding works differently. So can you please expand on how you would be able to support Black History Month and students of colour on campus? Thank you.
Okay, and we're going to start with Matt on that question, please.
So the most important one here is representation within the societies to make sure that they know how to properly represent themselves and to represent their members, which will be affected by these issues. We need to make sure that there's ways that the societies can make sure they're being rewarded and potentially penalised for their actions within the months. So yeah, and also just more support for sponsorship from everyone.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Marissa?
I think it would be really nice if I was elected to really work with Warwick Anti-Racism and all the liberation part-time officers to really work out what the problems are with engagement with these sorts of events and try and work out how we can get more people involved because they are so important. I think one of the best ways to do that is really just to review what's going on, whether it's surveys, it's just going out and talking to people about why they're not as engaged as they could be.
Okay, thank you very much, Marissa. And Farah?
Yeah, thank you for your question. What I would say about that in my manifesto, I'm very strongly going for lobbying the university for more funding, and that can go specifically to liberation groups because it's within the interest of the university and the union to properly represent you guys. Also, I remember Black History Month when you launched it before. It's a great event, but it's right at the start of term, so it'd be really great if you had a stall specifically for Black History Month at the Freshers' Fair, so then you can get people engaged right from the get-go because it's so important that we have that event.
Thank you, Farah. Okay, thank you very much. Next questions, please. If we just go, to Jenny just there, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks. And first of all, I want to thank all of the candidates for making a real effort for Plain Text Manifesto and making their campaign as accessible as possible. On that note, if you were elected as Societies Officer, what would you do to get more disabled students involved in societies on campus?
Okay, and we're going to start with Marissa.
So the Plain Text Manifesto is a really good thing. I think a lot of people have stuck to that, and it's really good that it will help bring the elections to more students. Something else I did with my campaign was I put subtitles on my videos, and I think that's something I'd like to encourage more societies to do in their promotional videos. Include subtitles and include plain text versions of anything they have, any images they have for posters for their events, so that it reaches more students that have accessibility issues.
Okay, thank you very much. Farah?
Yeah, thanks, Jenny, for your question. On the Societies menu, when you click on RAG or MTW or whatever, I would then call for a separate tab that specifically deals with what they offer for accessibility needs. So it's crystal clear how you guys can get involved. I had the idea about the digital handbook on YouTube. I would really sort of work with you guys to work out how we can represent that and then showcase it in YouTube videos to make all that kind of stuff really accessible to execs to make that work.
Thank you, Farah. And finally, Matt.
One of the best ways to tackle this issue will definitely be to have sit-down discussions with the disabled students officer between the execs to make sure that they know how to provide the support for the potential members. There's not enough awareness definitely at the moment of how, for example, carers will be affected when they go into society, how people with disabilities will be affected if they have any physical impairments, things like that. There's not enough support for the societies to make those people aware, and there's not enough representation either.
Thank you very much, Matt. Okay, put your hands up for more questions. If we just go to the lady in the blue T-shirt up there on the stool.
Hi guys, what are you going to do to get postgrads involved in societies? Because I feel like they are left out massively of the university experience.
Okay, so postgrads involved in societies. We're going to start with Farah.
So with regards to SocsFed, obviously that's a bit of a barrier. I would continue to keep the £10 price for postgrads frozen, just to make it even more accessible for postgrads to get involved. Also, I really think the Digital Freshers Fair is going to be a great idea, because a lot of the time it's traditionally a freshers event. So they think, oh, I can't go, or there's a lot of people. Having the opportunity to see everything online and watch it again and really reflect on what you want to spend with your limited time, I think that'd be the best route.
Sorry, to stop you there. Matt?
I definitely feel like the way to go for this is more activities and just more energy on campus during the orientation week. At the moment, there's nothing in there really that's happening all through the campus, and there's no way for people to get involved in the societies. There was, for the first time ever, the orientation week societies performance in the copper rooms. But as it was organised, and then societies were left to their own devices. There was poor signposting, and it needs to be a bigger and better event, really.
Okay, thank you very much. And finally, Marissa.
I really think this comes down to a communication thing, so working with the postgraduate officer about how best to engage those students. I also think another really good way of achieving that is just by encouraging more societies to have a postgraduate representative on their execs. I know it's something the law exec have, it's actually sitting right here, and it's a really good way of reaching those hard-to-reach students.
Okay, brilliant. Pop your hands back up. We've got, yes, the in the glasses there, third row.
Hi, thank you. I'm president of the Warwick Globalist Student Media Society. We quite struggle to get funding, but one of the things we decided to do is to actually reject corporate sponsorship on ethical grounds. So I'd like to ask, how would the candidates propose to support student societies which don't want to take the corporate route?
Okay, we'll start with Matt, please.
Definitely lobbying with the university to provide more support for such groups that don't want to take that support from the corporate grounds would be a first primary step. Also exploring ways that other societies can put on events for you to help you fundraise, and that will promote the collaboration between them. It will bring in their members and hopefully get them to spend a little bit of cash to raise money for you guys.
Okay, Marissa?
I think with societies like that who don't want to go down the corporate route, I think it would be really good to have conversations with you guys about what sort of areas you are looking, what sort of routes you are looking to go down, whether it is just looking at local, more independent businesses to work with who have strong ethical backgrounds and roots in the work they do. Again, to echo Matt, I think lobbying the university to help as well is always a strong way of getting funding.
Okay, and finally, Farah.
To echo those two, definitely lobbying the university for more funding specifically for you guys. Also, using different routes, so as well as corporate sponsorship, you could approach the third sector. So RAG, obviously we do charity stuff, but you could definitely work with an organisation that is ethical, that is green, and you could work together to put on an event that they could support you for. And I think that could be a good route for you.
Okay, more questions from the audience. Put your hands up. Yes, down here, Isaac.
Hey guys, in terms of societies, they do so many amazing things, but sometimes there's a sense within the university that not enough people know about it, or not enough members of staff or senior management really get it. How do you plan to kind of promote that to the university so that we can get as much support as possible for the 260 plus societies?
Okay, we're going to start with Marissa.
Sure, so there's a few different ways of doing that. I think a good way, specifically with academic societies, is just getting them to work closer with their departments, more closely with their departments. Those departments can send out emails to all the students and reach potentially more than those societies even have as membership. In terms of other events, I think a lot of departments now have the big screens in their different departments, and I think it's encouraging them to promote society events as and when they ask. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Marissa. Farah?
I really think the key here is recognising the incredible things that we do and marrying that up with the academia. So my idea about an activity points scheme, so basically for anything that you do, whether it's big or small in societies, you earn points, and then at the very end of a university career, you then get it on your official degree records. So there and then you've got your academia and your extracurricular activities equally measured, equally represented. So I think embedding that in the existing infrastructure of academia would be the best way to do that.
Thank you, Farah. And finally, Matt.
I think one of the ways to tackle this is to give societies more support in how to get their achievements recognised on HERE reports. At the moment, there's not much out there, and you have to go through so many people. I know that I personally have been battered around the top of the SU so many times in trying to get my society's achievements recognised. Also, another way is just to talk to them about how much it improves student retention. They don't know the work that we do in providing the welfare and support for our members and keeping them at this university.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much. We have time for more questions. Yes, the gentleman down there.
What will you do to ensure there is a good amount of non-alcoholic socials for each society?
Okay, so non-alcoholic socials for each society, and we're going to start with Farah.
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult issue, especially with a lot of societies. There's a strong drinking culture, and with freshers, that needs to be addressed. I think what I do is make sure that every society during Freshers Week has one big, expanded non-alcoholic social. And also, I think during term one, there's a lot of pressure for freshers to consume alcohol, and you don't need it to be involved in societies. So I think I'd like to run a campaign just to make it really aware that you don't have to have the two together.
Thank you very much, Farah. Matt?
Definitely more society engagement during things like Dry January, and that will help with the non-drinking socials. But also, I mentioned it in my manifesto right at the bottom, if I have time for blue sky thinking, then it would be really nice to lobby for some centralised grant that societies with not much funds can dip into to give them support for non-drinking socials specifically. So yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And finally, Marissa.
Sure, I actually don't tend to drink at socials, so I definitely get on board with this one. I just think you need to encourage people to do more non-alcoholic socials. I know a lot of societies do film nights and things, and they're really successful, and I think the best way to encourage more people to do it is to really celebrate those people that are doing it well. The SU could do more to say how well, a particular society did a film night and how many people turned up and how happy everyone was because of it.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. We have time for one more question. We'll go to the societies officer, George.
Hey guys, so being SOX officer is a really busy job. The day-to-day work is there's a lot of it. So if you could do one thing, one long-term big thing from your manifesto, what is your one priority for the year?
Okay, so your one priority for the year. Last question here, and we're going to start with Matt.
Definitely the sponsorship there. It will provide so much more support for societies. It means that we can bring in the big companies, we can bring in the local companies, we can bring in a wide range of people with different ethical backgrounds, and we can work together face to face to provide more support, more financial support for societies so they can support their members better.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Marissa?
I know it's a really busy job, but I really think the key thing is communication. I really think students could benefit from a lot more swift replies and just more face-to-face time with the society's officer, and really make sure that those problems are being dealt with and tailored specifically to their needs. It sounds like not a big revolutionary idea, but I think it's those little things that really help student societies to flourish.
Okay, thank you very much, Marissa. And finally, Farah.
100% from talking to the people about my manifesto points, it's got to be the Digital Freshers Fair. We have to make things as accessible and as engaging as possible. It's just unfair that you have that one opportunity when everything is so... There's an information overload going on anyway. People probably are hungover, let's be realistic. It's unrealistic to think you'll get to there once. If we have give people the time to reflect on what they actually want to do and what is the best fit for them, then we will have sustained engagement, not that spike.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, there you go. That brings to a close our Societies Offer section. Let's have a round of applause for all three prospective candidates, Marissa, Farah and Matt. Thank you very much, guys. Do stay in your seats, so we'll have a little chat, whatever you want to do. We've got about 5-10 minute break, and then we're going to be moving on to the position of Democracy and Development Officer. One down. All right, yes? Yes, no, have a look now, yes.
Can the candidates for DDO please make themselves known to the Democracy team? That's candidates for DDO to the Democracy team, please. Can Matt and Ross please make themselves known to the media team? That is Matt and Ross to the media team. Thank you. Can Ross please make himself known to the media team? Ross to the media team.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next position tonight, and that's Democracy and Development Officer. So we've got our 4 prospective candidates up here. Just a little bit about what this position is. Obviously, as DDO, they'll be the person responsible for the running of the autumn elections and officer elections, as well as all student meetings. They'll also be an integral part of the SU Democracy Exec and the SU Funding Exec, with societies and sports clubs contacting them about their elections. So we've got our 4 candidates up here. We've got Matthew, Becky, Matt and Ross. So a round of applause for our candidates. Okay, so we're going to sort of go on as we did before. So each of you have got 2 minutes to sort of present your campaign, and then we'll move on to the set questions, and then we'll come to the audience for any questions you might have as well. So we'll start with opening remarks, and we're going to start with Matthew.
Okay, hi, I'm Matthew Axby. I'm a third-year maths physics student, and I'm running to be your next Democracy and Development Officer. I want to help create and design a lecture-free Freshers Week, which in my opinion isn't just like a chance to have fun, but it's a proper welfare necessity to help new students settle in. I'm thinking lots of like society and club activities, some like I Heart Consent workshops, that sort of thing. I want to introduce an SU loyalty card that works across all the outlets, and put some obvious physical and online suggestion boxes there for feedback. I want to expand the funding exec into a full development exec, which is what was originally intended, so that students can have a proper input into how the SU runs. I want to get the SU to sell and top up Swift cards, which are a sort of West Midlands Oyster card thing, so you don't need exact change. And I want to generally work on the bus services and build on the work this year's SABs have done to make that better. For cyclists, I want to set up a second-hand bike sale in Term 1 and also work with the university to install covers over more bike racks. I also think there needs to be a pedestrian crossing by Cannon Park, and I'll push Coventry City Council to install one after they've previously just ignored the issue. I also want to make sure that everything we do is inclusive and welcoming to all of our students. Our diversity is one of Warwick's strengths, and I really want to work on that. It's also important to make sure that Warwick accommodation provides affordable options for everyone. This year, the SU have managed to keep costs down, and so this is something I'd want to continue on to future years. I also want to try and keep the university within the Freedom of Information Act, because it's a vital tool to hold the university to account, as you'll have seen in all the student media that's been using it. Based on last year's statistics, less than 1 in 5 students will vote. SU democracy is obviously not something that people seem to care about that much, and I want to change that. I want to simplify the systems, make it easier for people to get involved, and just generally encourage everyone to take part. Thank you very much for coming along to this, and obviously a big thank you to everyone that's made it happen. And vote Axby for DDO.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. And now, Becky.
That week has come around again when everybody gets really concerned about bus services, rent rises and meal deals. A handful of the student body throw their enthusiasm for student politics into a week of posters, catchy slogans and maybe even a prop or two. But hiding behind the bright lights of election week is a systemic issue with the accessibility of our democratic formats. Turnout is low and voter apathy is high. I think much can be done in the way of opening up SU democracy to all. I have proposed both the development of an SU app for the purposes of voting and the reorganisation of policy formation to fully utilise the knowledge and expertise of societies to try and tackle this issue. I feel it's of high importance that we engage with students more effectively and provide them with both the knowledge to recognise the issues which affect them and the tools through which they can affect change. There is, of course, merit in debating the role of the SU at a time where the Higher Education Green Paper seeks to diminish and change the role of the student movement. However, these reflections should not be to attack the progressive nature of the student movement on issues of liberation. Rather, the role of democracy and development should be about recognising the minuscule strata of the engaged student population who debate around such nuanced issues of secondary importance to the overall attack on students, and rather looks to broaden those debates, making them accessible to a wider proportion of the student population, utilising the huge campaign and advocacy base to the best of our advantage. As your DDO, I won't shelve issues of democracy. I'll set up a permanent Warwick food bank and a clothing cooperative. I aim to review and hopefully overcome many of the practical limitations of setting up new initiatives on campus, which often leaves many of the election promises made this week unfulfilled. This will make it easier for my DDO predecessor and SABs in future years to enact the change they were elected to deliver. In proposing these policies, I'm sharing my vision for an SU which represents all of its members and truly fights for positive change. Back Becky for DDO.
Much, Becky.
Thank you.
Got to stop you there. Thank you. Okay, and Now we're going to go to Matt.
Hello everyone, you have to apologise because I'm slightly losing my voice. But I'm Matt Greenham and I'm standing to be your next Democracy and Development Officer. This year I've got the pleasure of serving as your Environment and Ethics Officer, which has allowed me to experience firsthand how the SU runs. I've worked closely with some of the current SABs, including the current DDO, Ollie Rice, with whom I ran the first Go Green Fair during Freshers. At university level, I was part of the team who successfully pressured the university to divest from fossil fuels, which involved navigating the university's complex committee structures, on which I'll push for better student representation so we have our voices heard. Over my 4 years at Warwick, I've gained experience working with loads of societies. I'm currently the co-coordinator of Warwick Hub. I'm on the execs of RAW, the Warwick Globalist, and People and Planet. I believe the SU is inherently a campaigns organisation, here to fight for the best interests of students. Elect me, and I'll strive to do just that. I'll continue the great work of the SABs this year, resisting the extortionate rent increases on campus, establish a Rate My Room scheme so we can share our experiences with bad landlords and estate agents so they're forced to improve their standards. I'll fight for more study space both on and off campus, including longer opening hours so we can study when it best suits us. Further afield, I'll campaign for student services against the unjust cuts to maintenance grants and the Green Paper. Closer to home, I'll extend the Reddit-style up and down vote system so it's much more accessible and easier for people to have their say on important issues in the SU, develop an SU loyalty card, and expand the cheap range in outlets so it better caters for a range of dietary requirements. My full manifesto details all of my ideas, including an alternative careers fair and a unified SU calendar so you never miss out on exciting events. I believe my experience, achievements and commitment makes me the best person for the job. Please look online and vote Matt Greenham as your next DDO.
Thank you very much, Matt. And finally, Ross.
Hi, I'm Ross. I'm standing for Democracy and Development Officer because I think, like many students here at Warwick, I think the SU has lost sight of the proper purpose of student representation here. Now, I want an SU that fights for tangible and real things like, better copper rooms, better services, and which, to be fair, it does, but it also focuses on lots of divisive political issues where I don't think it really has any business in dealing with. For example, the Israel-Palestinian conflict, we're not the UN, we're the SU, let's focus on real student issues. Now, I'm very surprised I'm up on this stage, really. And you also might stood for the funding and welfare execs, and since then I've got involved, and that's why I'm here now. The funding exec is my favourite because, well, it focuses on giving money to different students to do real things, and it doesn't talk about ideology like the rest of the SU seems to be doing. I've been here many times at all student meetings where someone has argued for a completely insane idea, and it's been passed with, 800 votes out of 24,000 or something like that. We've got to ask, why don't students want to get involved? And a lot of the time, students see the SU as a kind of echo chamber where people go to, advance their own ends and to argue about things they want to do. Now, I want an SU that works for students, all students, and delivers real things. I want to, look at the copper rooms, I want to look at the services we provide and make them so much better. My energy won't be spent calling management and asking them to remove the sun from their outlets because we voted to boycott it, or to boycott some company. I'll be focusing on real things. So vote Ross for DDO for a union which represents all students. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ross. Okay, so what we'll do now is we're going to move on to the set questions that have been made by the Raw News team and approved by the Warwick SU, and then we'll come to the audience after that. So any questions, we'll try and get through as many of them as possible. Okay, so we're going to go to our set questions. The first one tonight, what is your number one priority as Democracy and Development Officer? And we're going to start with Matthew.
Okay, well, I think the main thing about SU Democracy and Development is that it all needs to aim to serve the students. And I think, as has been shown by the turnout in all of our democratic processes, really, there is a sort of general apathy and lack of engagement. So I think the main priority is to get students engaged, to get them to understand what their SU actually does for them, and just generally try and encourage them all to take part more and make the SU really represent students.
Okay, thank you very much, Matthew. Becky?
Yeah, I also think, I agree with Matt, I think that engagement is really important. That would be my key priority. But rather than just trying to encourage students to come to the SU as it currently is, I think students will get involved in the SU if they feel it reflects them. This means making sure that issues they care about are debated, things like liberation positions are considered, and issues of liberation are really have a place in our SU.
Okay, thank you very much, Becky. Matt?
Yeah, I definitely think engagement is probably my top priority, mainly because students don't know how to get their voices heard, and it's really difficult to kind of find out how you can go about expressing your views and getting them acted upon. And I think specifically within the university context, because the university committee structure is so complicated, it's almost deliberately designed so that people can't have their say.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. And finally, Ross.
RSU is controlled by just a few students out of a university of 24,000. At ASMs, I see students pitted against one another with very controversial policies. Thank God the boycotts and sanctions was not passed, but if it was, that would have been a good example. Now, I want to raise quorum for controversial and political motions like that to 20%, so about 4,800 students. That way, they won't pass as easily, and things will actually have to have popular support to become policy.
Okay, thank you very much, Ross. Okay, we have an online question next. This came from the poll that was put online. So this is, how do you think the role of DDO fits in with the rest of the sabbatical team, and where do you cross over and where do you step back, in your opinion? And we're going to start with Becky.
Yeah, I think obviously DDO crosses a lot of things. I'd probably argue it's the broadest SAB role. The place that I think currently I would collaborate most with is probably with welfare and campaigns. I myself would like a system of temporary withdrawal and work towards including everybody in our democracy, including those who withdraw for personal health reasons or mental health reasons. So yeah, I think welfare, but also things like societies. I'm proposing that societies have more of a place in policy formation. So yeah, those two areas I'd say.
Thank you, Becky. Matt?
Yeah, definitely welfare. I think because the role of SABs is to represent students, and student welfare is a top priority for everyone. In my manifesto, I've talked about making the hardship fund more publicised and more accessible for people, and working with liberation societies and officers to help promote and make their campaigns and causes a lot more supported.
And Ross?
Parts of the role which are very distinct from the other roles on the SAB team, but really it's about working as part of a team. Now, there are lots of candidates from Warwick for Free Education who are standing, and if they get elected, I would like to be on that team to be a yardstick of common sense, let's say, to stop very bad things happening. So it's about working with the team and making sure that students are represented, but primarily that we have common sense in the student union.
Okay, and finally, Matthew.
Yeah, I think as has been said, the DDO role is probably by far one of the broadest portfolios on the team. I think you've got to let the other officers guide on their issues. When it comes to education issues, you let the education officer take the lead, but provide your support for campaigning and stuff to get people engaged with all student meetings, get people wanting to help with the policy, things like that. So yeah, and I think working with welfare and campaigns is especially important, and especially with the liberation officers.
Okay, thank you very much, Matthew. Okay, our next question this evening. What experience have you got to prove you would do a good job in this role? And tonight we start with Matt.
I mentioned some of this in my speech earlier. But I've been a loads of society execs. I'm your current ethics and environment officer, so I've had meetings with university staff already about student engagement and sustainability strategy. They've been quite productive, but also it's given me an insight as to how the university kind of views student engagement as kind of a token student. So you'll sit in a meeting and they'll say, oh, what do the students think? And you have to represent 24,000 students in one sentence, and it's just impossible.
Okay, thank you very much. Matt, Ross?
Well, I suppose the most obvious one is that I'm chair of the funding exec, which is one of the two execs linked to the DDO role. Also, I'm on welfare exec, which, as other candidates have said, is linked quite closely with the role of DDO. I've been on a society exec, and I've been around student politics pretty much since I've started university, and I've very much enjoyed getting involved, and I hope I can make a difference.
Okay, thank you, Ross. Matthew?
Okay, so I'm currently the Deputy Returning Officer for the SU, which means I've been responsible for helping with the elections and the all-student meeting referendums up till now. Obviously, I'm not doing it for this election. I'm also on the SU Democracy Exec, and we've had a great time sort of getting democracy working this year. Outside of university, I'm a charity trustee and administrator, and I've been helping make sure my charity follows all the necessary rules. And I've also been an SSLC rep for 3 years now, so I know sort of how the university works as well.
Thank you, Matthew. And finally, Becky.
Yeah, I have a huge amount of experience in campaigning, recruitment, membership and accessibility, especially within a prominent campaign society of which I'm the current chair and have previously been the women's officer. I've done a URSS independent research project on political participation, which I think gives me a good standing. And I was also on the Got Politics exec as the communication and events organiser. So I'm not shy at organising massive events like the week-long academic conference that I organised for them.
Okay, thank you very much, Becky. Okay, our next question tonight. Ollie Rice is the current DDO. Are there any of his achievements or policies that you would seek to reverse? That's the question there, and we start with Ross.
Well, I like Ollie very much. We've worked with each other a lot over the past year. Now, looking back at his manifesto, well, I do like Zanana's How It Is, I'm afraid, Ollie. So I wouldn't go forward with that policy. Also, I think looking at safe space, Ollie spoke a lot about safe space. I think it's kind of bad for free speech a lot of the time. I would like to relax the rules in that sense and reignite free speech and free debate here at Warwick.
Thank you, Ross. Matthew?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of a lot of what we've done this year. I think the exec system's worked really well. The thing that hasn't worked so well is the student assembly. It's failed to meet both terms, so I think that's something I'd want to maybe get rid of and find a better way of engaging students with policy, put more resources into the execs and the all-student meeting and try and engage people that way.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Becky?
Yeah, Ollie, congrats. You've had a great year, but I would agree that the student assembly is a policy area which could have been improved. I've proposed that I would scrap it. I think in theory it works really well, but I'm not prepared to have systems within our democracy that are there on the basis of principle. I think it seems a little bit tokenistic, and where I do support the ideas of randemocracy, I think that we could make sure that there's a lot more efficient ways of including everybody into our democracy.
Thank you very much, Becky. And finally, Matt.
Yeah, I agree that this student assembly hasn't worked as well as it could have done, but I really think that the exec system that was introduced this year has worked really well. That's why I'm also proposing to introduce a development exec so people can have their say in the SU. But I really like Ollie's work on study spaces with the bus companies and also resisting the rents on campus. It's been really good.
Thank you very much, Matt. Okay, we have another online question now from the poll from there, and that is, do all the candidates value accessible elections, such as introducing plain text manifestos and subtitles to videos, and what would they do to further improve access to SU elections? And we start with Matthew.
Yes, definitely. My manifesto has a plain text version, my video has subtitles. I've done everything that I know how to. Hopefully, I mean, what I want to see is I think plain text manifestos should essentially be compulsory for SAB candidates and preferably for society execs as well, to try and encourage more people to sort of make things accessible. I think it's just about giving candidates the support to realise that what they're thinking of doing may not be accessible for everyone and to guide them with how to make sure that it will be.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Becky?
Yeah, I support both of those policies. In my manifesto, I've actually also proposed split ticket candidacy so that two members can run on the same ticket. I think that's really important. But I think I'd go one step further as to say that the whole way that SU democracy works actually discourages people with physical and mental health disabilities. This is a very nerve-wracking experience up here right now, and the people who can do this well are not necessarily the best people for the job. So I think widening participation across the board is really key.
Okay, thank you very much, Becky. Matt?
Yeah, I think the SU Elections Week is very inaccessible for people. It's a ridiculous amount of work running around all day doing lecture shout-outs across campus and having to combine a campaign team to help put up posters everywhere. I think there's a lot of work to be done to look at the ways in which we can make it a lot more accessible and a lot less physically and mentally enduring for people.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. And finally, Ross.
I want SU democracy to be as accessible for everyone as possible, and at the moment, it isn't. So I'll look at specific measures to around manifestos. I don't think anything should be compulsory. I don't like when too many things are compulsory. But I will be looking at ways to engage students more because we have very low turnout. So 5,000 might vote in this election out of so many students. I'm going to be looking at lots and lots of ways to really make our SU more inclusive and better at democracy.
Okay, thank you very much, Ross. Okay, we're about to have our last question here, so we will be opening it to the floor in a minute. So if you've got a question or something that comes to mind, wait a moment. Here is our last question tonight, and that is, how are you going to ensure democracy thrives at Warwick and isn't something most students don't care about? Okay, that's our last question, and we're going to start with Becky.
So I've proposed the SU app to try and make democracy a little bit more accessible. If we can vote on there rather than sitting in the drafty copper rooms, I think that's better. I've also proposed a change to policy formation. I think we don't utilise societies enough. These are grassroots organisations at our university that a lot of people get involved in, far more than get involved with SU democracy. So I think if we look at the access points to how we engage with students, I think that's key, and I think societies are the way to go through that.
Okay, thank you very much, Becky. Matt?
Yeah, I agree. So in my manifesto, I've put using the Reddit style up and down vote system. I think that's a really exciting and easy way for people to go online and have their say on lots of different issues, and that can be extended for policy votes and that kind of thing as well. And I agree with Becky about societies. You know, that is the main contact that people have with the SU, that and the outlets. And I think there's a lot of work that could be done linking all of it together and joining the dots.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. Ross?
Well, I'd like to say, Ollie's done a lot to promote ASMs this year, and I'd like to continue that, definitely. I think what we've got to do, we have to make sure that people campaign for and against policies more. Now, I want to raise quorum by, quite substantially, so that lots and lots of people have to vote for a policy for it to become policy. And if you do that, people are going to campaign more. People are going to go around calls, talk to people in kitchens, and you'll see turnout increase. More people will get involved with the SU.
Okay, thank you very much, Ross. And finally, Matthew.
Yep, so those are all great ideas. The SU app, Membership Solutions Limited, who run all our software, are currently developing one, so hopefully there'll be one of those within a year or two. Uppy Downy thing, again, great idea. That should hopefully be launching next term, I believe. Ask Ollie about that. I think it's about getting people more involved, making it easier to get engaged. In terms of sort of raising quorum, I think it's a good idea. Don't put it too high. I mean, less than 20% of people will probably vote in these elections, which is bad. We need to boost that. But putting it that high for policy just means nothing will ever get...
Thank you, Matthew. I've got to stop you there. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to... we're going to open it to the floor now, so public questions. So if you want to pop your hand up if you have a question or not. We'll start with Jenny.
This is a question for Ross. If you want to increase inclusivity and turnout, why are you naturally excluding students by not making your manifesto accessible, and you're not in favour of making things that improve accessibility compulsory?
Okay, Ross?
Well, my manifesto, I'm very proud of my manifesto, and I was trying to make lots of points in there. But, yeah, no, it's not in plain text version. I was doing it, and working with the SU system, I mean, doing code, that kind of thing, very difficult. So I'll do my best to make it very accessible in that sense. But no, I do believe in a more accessible student union. We're not very accessible. Not many people vote. More people are going to vote if I'm DDO. It's going to happen.
Okay, thank you very much, Ross. Pop your hands up for more questions. It's probably only just become to Ollie down here at the front.
Hello. So, yeah, I'm Ollie, the current DDO, and I think you're right when you say this is possibly one of the more broader rules. I feel like this year I've been engaged with the buses, outlets, venues, democracy, library, all sorts of things, environment, etc. You touched on so many big points, but one of the main points that a lot of people don't realize that the DDO traditionally focuses on is student rents on campus. The DDO sits on a student rents group, they sit on the University Finance Committee, and they sit on the University Council. All three stages in which the university's rent proposals for on-campus rents go through. So the DDO traditionally has quite a big role to play there. And Rob did last year, he managed to secure a freeze in Cryfields. This year we're in negotiations, and what's proving true is that the SU actually has quite a lot of weight in these negotiations, to the extent that these negotiations are going on much longer than usual this year, and hopefully we'll have an outcome that benefits students very soon. But on the issue of campus accommodation rents, what do you feel about where they are at? What measures would you take to secure affordable accommodation in the future? And generally, what would you like to see? What's the sort of range of accommodation that you would like to see on campus for future years when the university looks towards building new accommodation blocks, decommissioning old ones, etc., etc.?
Okay, so we've got campus accommodation rents and accommodation on campus, and we're going to start with Matt, please.
The Rent Rants survey that went around earlier this term was really successful because it enabled us to get a lot of information from students who are in accommodation telling us that they do want affordable accommodation. And I think it's really, really important that there is a range of accommodation that is covered, for which the rent is covered by your student loan, because it's completely inaccessible if there isn't affordable accommodation that's covered by your loan and you can eat as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. Ross?
Rent's an issue, and I would say where to start with something quite simple. In the Fresher Handbook, let's let freshers know about cheaper accommodation that might be available around Coventry or in Remington, because you don't have to live on a campus for first year. You can find cheaper accommodation, and I would say let's push that quite a lot. But this comes back to a broader point about management and the SU. Management can't take the SU seriously if it's asking for boycotts and bans and the like. Management will take the SU seriously, I hope. If I'm DDO, I'll build up a very strong relationship with management so that kind of thing and others can be done.
There. Matthew?
The SAB teams over the years have done really great work about keeping rents down. I think the important thing is to make the university realise that students don't always have that much money. We've just lost maintenance grants. They've said the loans will go up to cover it. I'm not sure that'll necessarily happen. So it's about working with the university and making them realise that we need a ladder of it. You need ones like Bluebell up the top that you can go to if you've got lots of money, but you need affordable options that everyone can afford to make sure that everyone can afford to live on campus, because it's really not the same living off campus in first year.
Thank you, Matthew. Becky?
Yeah, I think one of the key things around on-campus rents is that we need to raise more awareness of it. I think there are only 3 on-campus accommodations that are covered with a maintenance loan, and I think that's really shocking. I think that's something that the student body en masse could get behind. I'd also like to say that as this is an issue that affects a lot of students, we are a union and we should be campaigning and fighting against it. I'd finally like to say that this is also something that crosses intersectionality. For example, things like accessible rooms and disabled rooms, you don't get an extra coverage of money for those, and you do have to pocket them out of their own money, and then they're more expensive.
I've got to stop you there. Thank you very much. If you could pop your hands up for more questions. We'll just go to the sort of the back row there. There you are.
Hi, you've all said you want to increase voter turnout, but how are you actually going to make this happen?
Okay, so voter turnout, and how are you going to make it happen? And we're going to start with Ross, please.
Well, I recently spoke to a student, an engineering student, and he said, the SU does lots of things that he does not like, all the political stuff, really. And I'm going to end that. I'm also going to raise quorum, as I've said before. People are going to campaign for policies. People are going to campaign against them. Because if they don't reach that, then they're not going to pass anyway. So we're going to have far more active students when they're campaigning for policies. And I think that will make a real difference.
Thank you, Ross. Matthew?
I think a lot of it's about making students aware of what the SU actually does for them. For a lot of people, it's a building and maybe some societies, and that's it. There's some stuff going up on the SU's Facebook page this week, actually, which is brilliant, which is like a whole list of things the SU has actually done for you. So I think we really want to push that and make people aware that the SU does matter. It does matter who gets elected in these elections, and just make people realise that they need to vote because it counts.
Okay, thank you. Becky?
Yeah, we've talked a little bit, and it was talked about in the previous hustings, about a week zero Freshers Week. And I personally think that what do hungover freshers want more than to come in and learn about SU democracy? I think there is a place to learn about what your SU does and how to access it in your first weeks of the uni rather than trying to navigate it themselves. And I think it's really important to have a bit of an open book policy on how we can change the union to be better for us. Take the lead from the floor, take the lead from the ground.
Okay, thank you, Becky. And finally, Matt.
So in my manifesto, I've put about producing a democracy handbook. I know not everyone will read that, and it's probably only the engaged people that will read that, but including that democracy information within the Freshers Handbook and a history of the SU, because the SU has done some incredible things over the years, and people don't realise the wins that the SU has had for students. So I think it's really important to focus on that history, and then that will hopefully inspire people.
Okay, thank you, Matt. We have time for one more quick question. I will, in the red there, just in that row. Thank you.
Thanks. Historically, universities have been a huge driving force behind political change. I was, particularly for liberation groups, I was wondering how, and that's across all societies, I was wondering how you would help this and make political change across the country and maybe the world.
Okay, so on political change, and to start us off on this last question, Matthew, please.
Yeah, so the SU's done some great things in the past. I won't go into them, but if you look into the SU history, it turns out we've been fairly central in a lot of things. I think it's about working with campaigning societies and the Welfare and Campaigns Officer to just sort of make sure the resources are there and the funding is there to just make sure that what students care about does get noticed, and we're not just shouting at each other. We get out there and we make people notice it, and yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. Becky.
Yeah, I don't know whether DDO change in the world might be a little ambitious, but I think I'd give it a go. I think one of the key things I've learned, that especially as a campaign base, the main thing that you need to do, especially when you're dealing with liberation issues, is let it come from someone from that liberation group themselves. There is nothing worse than someone who doesn't identify in those groups trying to tell the liberation groups what it is they want, what it is they need, and what they need to make the SU more accessible for them. So I think taking the lead from liberation groups themselves would be key to my policy.
Okay, thank you very much, Becky. Matt?
Yeah, so we all know that the SAB lineup this year is white men, and that is problematic. And I think that the SABs have done a really, really good job at linking up with different liberation groups and societies. But not only here on campus, but we're a union, and our job as a union is to take a stance on issues and to work with other unions and to work with other external groups, grassroots campaigns, to help build up movements and to work together to achieve these changes.
Thank you very much, Matt. And finally, Ross.
Well, let me be clear. I don't think the SU should be a political organisation, as I've said before. We should focus on liaising with management on behalf of students and providing useful services, really. That's what we do. And I think this political activism that we've seen has been very damaging to the SU's reputation and the universities, really. I mean, the government does, Joe Johnson, people who matter, they don't take the SU seriously, or SUs in general, because of the type of political campaigning that they've done before.
Okay, thank you very much, Ross. That brings to an end our questions here for the DDO. A round of applause for all the prospective candidates, please. For Matthew, Becky, Matt and Ross. Well done. Okay, so there we go. We're almost coming to the end of question time. We have one more position left, and as you can guess, it is president. We're going to be doing that next. Nicole will be here taking that over. We've got 3 candidates. We've got Luke Pilot, George Creasy, and Remington Spa. They'll be taken to the stage in just a moment and answering your questions. Do stay with us. We'll be back in a tick.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here for the question time for the President. I'm Nicole from the Student Council. So, very excited session now. So, maybe a little bit about the position. So the President is the outward face of the SU, responsible for liaising with the Vice Chancellor, Registrar, and other senior managers of the university on everything from education to estates matters. You sit on the most influential university committees, including University Council, Senate, and the weekly steering committee. So here we have the 3 candidates for the president role today. We have Luke, Remington Spa, and George. Can we give them a round of applause? So our session will start with a 3-minute opening address from each of the candidates. Shall we start with Luke?
Awesome. Evening, everyone. My name is Luke Pilot, and I'm your current Welfare and Campaigns Officer, and this week I'm running to be your next President of Warwick SU. I think when it comes to running for this position, experience really counts, and being an incumbent sabbatical officer definitely helps with that, which I'm sure other sabbatical officers and previous presidents can attest to. I just want to talk a bit about what I've done, what my vision for being a president and what a students' union is, and what I will do when I come to the role. So coming from a sabbatical officer team that's all white men, is really important. We recognise that, and we take steps to make sure that we recognise the systems of oppression that students exist in, not just at Warwick, but nationally. We take that into account into what we're going to be proposing, what we're talking about, and the things we want to change when we come to position or when we go out into the student community. I really want to be that person to do that for you. I have a love for Warwick that meant that even after I graduated, I still didn't want to leave it. I wanted to be here another year. Even after another year here, I still want to be here for another year after that. You cut me, I'll bleed Warwick SU. I literally cut my thumb trying to put up cardboard yesterday. That's how committed I am to Warwick SU. I think the point of education gets questioned a lot during the hustings. We see a lot of lecture shout-outs and lots of students talking about the value for money, talking about their employability. I think if that's what you come to university for, that's perfect, but university can be so, so much more. And it's really important that we foster and maintain what students do, and make sure they've got the funding, they've got the space, they've got the provisions to make sure they do what they want to do and do more of it. And by doing that, we can bring all students together to become collective that's supportive, collaborative, and cooperative. And that's the point of the student movement, that's the point of the university, where we come together, we share ideas, we have fun, and we grow and develop and flourish. So if you vote me for president, I'll continue my priorities of making sure mental health is top of the agenda, making sure we've got a new university strategy to combat the increasing levels of students asking for wellbeing support. I'm going to make sure we practice our zero tolerance to sexual assault and violence on campus, because it is a problem nationally and not enough is being done. I want to make sure we can put a cap on international student tuition fees, because international students bring so much diversity and fantasticness to Warwick, but they're told by being given extortionate fees that they're not welcome, that they're only cash cows. We need to change that. And I also want to make sure we've got more funding for our clubs and SOCs, because the university doesn't quite recognise the importance of those to the development of our students. And also make sure we've got more study space to match the commitment and determination of our students. But I feel there's a bit of a barrier to that, and that is government policy in the form of the Green Paper, the Anchor White Paper, and abolition of maintenance grants, and the insidious presence of things like Prevent in our education systems. We need to combat this, and we can be political bodies. We can rally together and get our students together behind one movement, combat these changes, and make sure our education is fair and open for all. And that's, as a president, that's my priority, is making sure we protect everything we do as a student collective, protect our students, make education open and fair for all. And that's why you should vote for president.
Luke. Thank you. I just stop here. Thank you. So next we have... Sorry, Luke. So now we'll have Remington. Yeah.
So I can only assume that, like in the American debates, they're putting the person who's leading in the polls in the middle. And I'm not surprised that that's the case. I think the message that I have, that we're going to make Warwick great again, and the Warwick SU is not currently fit for purpose, I think is resonating strongly. What's wrong with Warwick SU at the moment? Now, I don't think it's serious. I don't think it's serious to be out standing in front of buses as a means to try and change policy. I don't think it's serious to try and ban little things as a means to engaging all students. I don't think it's serious to focus more upon trying to bring down capitalism than giving people value for the money in the SU establishments. But when I'm your president, I will be serious. And I've got serious policies that will show that. Now, someone's laugh and go, oh, you're a joke candidate. Well, the fact that the so-called joke candidate is engaging students much better than, some of the more serious candidates here, I think shows some of the problem. People don't take it seriously. Now, I think that last year's staff's done a lovely job, and I thank them for that, but I'd like to see sabbatical officers getting elected with a much, much higher percentage. Some people got elected with less than 5% of all students. In this room, there are 0.004% of all students on campus here. And that doesn't, to me, strike us as a sort of system which is really, really inspiring everybody. So, first of all, I want to be serious. But secondly, I'd like to say, I want to dispel this myth that Warwick SU doesn't know what it's doing. To me, it knows exactly what it's doing. And I think it's creating a system where no one is engaged. A few hundred people submit a policy, and then they can try and control it and try and ban something and try and go on a law march and feel powerful about themselves. But this isn't what people want, and it's really not what I think a good thing is. I first got involved in student politics when they tried to ban people from wearing different costumes, and it was such an ambiguously written motion that me, as a member of the Tamil Society at the time, I thought, I'm not going to be able to even join the Tamil dance class because this policy is going to let it be banned. And that's the reason why I first came to council and stood against something. So that is my complaint. But what sort of serious policies can I offer? Well, number one serious policy, I'd like to see a higher threshold for engagement. If you have a proper good policy, lots of people need to vote on it. I think that's common sense. Number two, I'd like to see means of engaging students. Humour, having photographs of the president over every bed. People are going to know who we are. People are going to go, yeah, that's a guy that I can look up to and aspire to. And, other things like that. We talk about value. We talk about we're going to offer, students better services. But, I don't see a Waitrose on campus. I only see Roots grocery store, which is expensive. So you vote for me, you're going to get serious policies, and we're going to make Warwick SU great again. Thank you.
Thank you, Remington. So now we have George, please.
Hello, everybody. My name's George Creasy, and obviously I'm here because I'm running for SU President. So I'm the current Societies Officer. But I'll bring it back to what I did as a student. So in my first year, I didn't really get involved. I was one of the unengaged students, and I sort of, at the end of first year, I had this weird feeling because I felt like I didn't know as many people, and I wasn't as involved and I didn't do what I wanted to do because my course was taking up so much of my time. In my second year, it all sort of kicked off, and I did Warwick Jailbreak, and got to Poland and just had the time of my life, and then got on the exec, became treasurer, founded Lost, became president of Jailbreak, ran for SOX officer, and the SU has literally changed my life. And coming into work every day as SOX officer and seeing the incredible work that societies in particular do, but students in general at Warwick do, amazes and astounds me every single day. Is why I get out of bed every day. And I would love to have the chance to represent you all in the incredible stuff you do at a more broad level. So what would I do as president? I'll quickly run through some of my ideas. I've got my big four ideas. So I came about my manifesto by chatting to people. I think by working with the execs this year, I've sort of seen what frustrations they have, what they think of Warwick. And in putting my manifesto together, I asked a lot of people, what are the three things that annoy you about being at Warwick? And a lot of people would say the standard stuff like buses, like study space, but then some weird things came up, well, stuff I wasn't expecting, like the lack of water fountains on campus, so I put it in my manifesto to campaign for it. Stuff like there's no cash machine near the library, so people have to trek all the way over here. It's little stuff like this which the SU can be more relevant to students in, I think, and change things like tangibly change things that actually matter to students. So my big four ideas are nights out for you. I think that the acts that play the copper rooms aren't representative of what students actually want. I want to elect an events exec or just form a committee of people that care about up-and-coming music and different genres as well, not just cheesy pop music, as much as I love pop. So yeah, I want to elect an exec to do that. A more modern SU for you. A lot of the other candidates are running on the idea of an SU app. I'm completely behind that. If you can join clubs and societies on your phone, if you can vote in the elections, I think that would increase turnout. If you could buy event tickets on your phone as well. My third idea is make management work for you. So we've got a new Vice Chancellor this year in Stuart Croft, and we can really form his view, and it's a really exciting time, to be honest. We can work with him, and he's very open to new ideas, and I think we can really make students' voices heard. And my fourth one is more space on campus for you, because this is the biggest thing that I think affects the most people, so in terms of study space, activity space, like green space, and society storage space. Not enough of this campus is dedicated to what students actually want it for. Like Jaguar Land Rover have just stolen our field, and that's not for students. So I want to make it more relevant to students. I was going to say a lot more in this speech, but I'll wrap it up there. So please vote Creasy for Pres. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Josh. So now we'll move on to the next session of tonight, and that will be a set of predetermined questions prepared by Raw and Warwick SU. So the first question is, why do you want to be president? We'll start with Luke.
So multiple reasons. I think I outlined quite a few in my speech. I've been extremely privileged to have been elected to the current position of welfare officer and work for the students. There's a fantastic group of students, and it's been that my passion has just been grown exponentially because of that. I want to be there, take the campaigns like mental health, like international students' rights, to the next level, to where they can be represented and we can really represent the student voice.
All right, thank you, Luke. So now we have Remington spot.
I want to be president because I want to make Warwick SU great again. I'm a great person, I'm a popular person, people love me, and I think that I really am the high-energy master negotiator that this union needs. I think you probably need me more than I need you. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we have Josh.
I kind of touched on this in my speech, but I know it sounds cliche, but the SU did change my life. My course, I did Morse as a course, and it was really tough and really hard for me. And the SU was an outlet, and it really improved my experience at Warwick University. And I really want to make that happen for more people, because it really did change my life. And I think as president, I would love to have that effect on others, because yeah, it's a great feeling.
Thank you, George. So the next question is, what would be your main priority as president? Shall we start with Remington?
I think my main priority won't surprise you, and that is to make Warwick SU great again. But the ways that we do that is to engage more students and make them actually respect and like the process. For example, there are thousands of people from China and Far East Asia on campus, but I really see very, very few being engaged in union politics. So I'd like to get them involved. I'd like to get them, more engaged and more enjoyable, like every other student as well.
Thank you very much. So now we have George.
My sort of overarching priority would be making the issue more relevant for you. So I think if we can shout about what we do and do more tangible changes that students actually care about, then that will have knock-on effects of how many people vote in our elections and start in terms of engagement. So if we can just do more tangible things like the acts in the copper rooms, then students will reflect that.
Thank you, George. Shall we have Luke?
My main priority will be accessibility, and that's accessibility in every aspect. So that's well-being and what can be a barrier to access to education. Other barriers to access to education, like fees, grants, bursaries, and also accessibility on campus, accessibility in your degree, accessibility to reading and books, just every aspect. I want to see making sure that we reduce as many barriers as possible to education in and around our university community.
Thank you, Luke. The next question is, why are you suited to the role? What experience can you utilize? We'll start with Josh, please.
Okay, so I talked about my experience earlier. I was a treasurer and then a president of a massive few hundred-person society. And I think being a sabbatical officer already gives you and being like a trustee and a director of the SU, gives you really good insight to how the SU works. And I think that's the sort of thing a president needs. You need, coming into it fresh would be tricky, I think. So having worked with Isaac so much this year, I think I've worked quite well placed and got good experience.
Thank you, George. Luke, please.
I think I'm suited to the role because I'm a good listener. I think the key point of being a representative in the student union is being a good listener, and I'm very keen to make sure all voices are heard and represented at every level in the university and in the national community. I've also got lots of experience. I was president of Warwick Mindware Mental Health Awareness Society, vice president of BANSOC, and obviously being a sabbatical officer and a trustee of the Students' Union has been absolutely integral to my development.
Thank you, Luke. And Remington, please.
Last year, I did my placement and I was a lobbyist for a big multinational company. And I think that if I can lobby government to try and change laws, to try and give people on the NHS access to the sort of medicine they need, I feel like I'll have the skills that can maybe get a microwave installed, for example. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next question is, how will you deal with issues of conflict of interest for example, between the student body and the university? So we'll start with Luke, please.
Well, again, just making sure everyone's voice is considered, make sure I've considered every implication. I think it's very easy to overlook in a position such as being a sabbatical officer to make a snap decision and to not think about the broader implications of that. And that's what I've been very good at this year, making sure that I think everything through slowly. And that's important, to making sure you consult everyone on your team as well, and making sure you get advice from staff, as well.
Thank you, Luke. And Remington, please.
I think that the university needs to respect us and respect the union. So we need to stop doing stupid things that make us look stupid and need someone who can go out, hear both points of view and try and come up with a sensible decision rather than just waving flags and trying to burn stuff, because that just makes it look silly.
Thank you, Remington. And George, please.
So I think it's really important for the sabbatical team to work as a team. Each of the sabbatical officers sits on various committees, but I think it's very important that we have a united front. So that's liaising with the part-time officers as well. So we go to the university, and it's not just one person's view, it's a whole team of elected students' views, and then we can hopefully reflect students better to the university.
Thank you. The next question is, what qualities do you have that demonstrate your capability to lead a team? We'll start with Remington.
Again, I think people like me. When I speak, people like to listen, and I like to listen to them too. And this sort of cross-listening functionality is crucial to leading a team. I've got a great team who've helped with this campaign. Actually, none of them have come, but still, that just shows I can work with a team and without a team.
Thank you, Remington. And Josh, please.
So by working with societies this year, I've worked with dozens, if not over 100 presidents, and it's really interesting to see other people lead teams. Some do it really well, and some don't do it as well. And I think that experience, and then working with my societies exec, having organised the biggest jailbreak this world has ever seen, I think these things make me a good leader.
Thank you, George. And Luke, please.
For me, it's about the experience I have had as an undergraduate, the experience I have had as a sabbatical officer, and being reminded that actually as a sabbatical team, we're a flat structure, and if you take that even further, as a student body, we are a flat structure, and remembering that we all represent each other, we fight for each other, and reminding everyone that we can be cooperative and be united in one front.
Thank you, Luke. The next question is, mental health is becoming a more prominent point of discussion at this university. What will you do to help elevate the stress and strain on students and support their mental well-being? We will start with George.
This is in my manifesto. I think it's about making sure students know that there's people there for them. So whether that is the advice centre, whether that is the residential life team, or that is their tutor on their course, I think these people need, the residential life team need more training, and they need to make that offer out to students at an earlier stage, so students feel safe and they feel like they can go to these people to talk to. Because I think at the minute, a lot of people don't even know who their warden is in their accommodation. I think that's bad. I think it's about people having someone to talk to and feeling like they can.
Thank you. And we have Luke, please.
Yeah, there are lots of things I want to do, being a current welfare officer. I want to make sure we get a new university strategy to make sure they're ready and prepared to deal with what is an exponential increase in issues with students' mental well-being. I want to make sure we get a permanent framework for peer support groups, make sure we get more well-being advisors in the university, because there's people who can intercept an issue before it becomes a crisis situation. I want to make sure we dismantle the stigmas around illnesses and make sure students feel comfortable by reframing the support services to them.
Thank you, Luke. And Remington?
I agree with what the other two have said. In addition to that, I'd like to also suggest that there needs to be more mental health awareness and help for international students, some of whom perhaps don't come from places where mental health is spoken about, and there's a lot more stigma around it. In addition to that, I think laughter is a good thing, so that's why I'd like to install the Hunger Games canon whenever someone drops out, because that was very popular.
Thank you, Remington. So now we go on to a question submitted online on the SU website. The question is, as president, do you think it's more important to be a good diplomat or a good campaigner? We'll start with Luke.
I think you don't need to have that dichotomy. You can have a bit of both. You do need to be a diplomat in terms of making sure you're representing and making concessions and compromises, and also making sure you're still pushing forward with the right responses for everything. But also, as a campaigner, unions are inherently campaigning organisations, institutions, and we need to be reminded of that. So we need to take activism, put that into the role as well.
Thank you. And Remington, please.
I think you need to do both, but you need to do it maturely. And I think diplomacy is probably the bit that is forgotten mostly by student activists because they think that they're going to change the world when in reality they can't even get a microwave installed for many, many years. So I'd say on balance diplomacy, and I'd like to see it done maturely.
All right, thank you. Is that? Yeah, thank you. So, and Josh?
I'm also going to cop out and say you need a bit of both. I think being diplomatic is really important, and you have to work with the team. It's all about managing relationships, whether that's other sabbatical officers or senior management at the uni or students. But then also, we are a campaigning organisation. You can't be afraid to stand up to the university and say, no, this does matter to students. This is important. This is what people care about. And yeah, that's what the president needs to do.
Thank you, George. Another question submitted online. How will you ensure your policies are not just idealistic and actually achievable? We will start with Remington.
So sometimes people say to me, how are you going to afford things such as the Remington Spa Student Village? And I say, well, I want to commercialise the union. I want to commercialise the cone. The cone's a great action figure, so why don't we make cone action figures? The cone has a really suggestive shape, so we can make cone sex toys. And these are sort of things that we can sell, and we can make a lot of money. I'm great at making money, and we're going to be able to pay for it, and that's how I'm going to achieve what we're going to do.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Remington. So, George, please.
I think a lot of it is about focus. It's about focusing on what actually matters and prioritizing, but then also empowering other people and working through others. So not thinking that I can do it all myself, but trying to delegate power and utilizing the expertise in the SU, trying to empower the other SABs and the other part-time officers and societies to do a lot of the work themselves, because I think there's so much talent at this university that isn't being utilized, and if we could spread that downwards, then that would work.
Thank you, George. And we have Luke, finally.
Yeah, it's about thinking through every stage of how you're going to implement that change, making sure you know who you're going to consult on every aspect and every stage of that as well. And that includes collaboration, people in the student body in the university, even off campus, getting the advice you need, and always reminding yourself that you've got the students' best interests and views at heart during that process as well.
Thank you, Luke. Next question is, how will you ensure you are a representative figure for the university? We will start with George.
So one of my ideas is to sort of have more direct democracy. So I think through giving iPads to the street team, we can go out and get more students' views. And then I think lots of that data will be really useful in me being a representative in terms of the university. So I can actually take students' views out, because like the rent rants, we could go to the university and said 10% of students that live on campus think this. That was a really powerful tool. So I think stuff like that can make me more representative.
Thank you, George. And Luke, please.
I would take it even further. Instead of just getting data, I want to have more students sitting on university committees. Why is it that I, a white cisgender man, am sitting on an equality and diversity committee just because I'm a welfare officer? We should have our part-time liberation officers on that committee as well. We need more of that, because the universities are for our students, not for senior management and their big paychecks. They're here for students. We need to take that power back, get them on those committees in that democratic structure.
Thank you, Luke. And Remington, please.
I also do not want a white man to be president, which is why I'm the only person who put themselves forward who would be an ethnic minority president. And I think that is one of the ways that I'll be more representative of all students. But secondly, I also think that there needs to be a bigger mandate for officers. So if I won, I change the bylaws so that it has to be 20% of all students voting for their president, then I resign, call a new election, and if not enough people voted, there'll never be another president again.
Thank you, Remington. Next question is, how will you encourage students to engage with the SU? We will start with Luke.
I think a lot of it comes from framing. We saw this with a pretty fierce debate at Council on ASM about about the former activism and the history we promote at Warwick. We need to remind students of that and put that in the context of what an SU is here for, and remind students we're not just a facility for cheap burgers and pints in the terrace bar. We're here for every aspect of student life, to represent you in every aspect of student life, and make sure our doors are always open to them.
Thank you, Luke. Remington, please.
I think we need a new paradigm. People are bored of the same old SU, going on about the same old issues in the same old way. A number of people I've spoken to have said, yes, I've seen your videos. They made me laugh. You seem like a great guy. I think you can make Warwick SU great again. So I think that we need better people in positions of power.
Thank you, Remington. And George, please.
To start this, the SU does so much. We're from a bar to democracy to society to sports club. We do so much, and we hit people in different ways. So we engage people in different ways. I don't think we need to force upon people, but we need to make sure people are aware that we're there for whatever they may want to engage with us with. And I think I'm going to bang on about it again, making it more relevant to students, then they will then reflect that back and engage more as a consequence of that.
Hey, George. This will be the last question before we move on to floor questions. So if you have something to ask one of our candidates, do have a brainstorm right now. We're just going to get to you in a minute. So question going to start with Remington is, what improvements would you like to see in the SU? Remington, please.
I think the main improvement, before anything else, is to ensure that people know who we are, which is why I've got my policy about photographs over every bed. But secondly, that people actually get someone that they want, which is why I think that needs to be a much, much higher threshold before any policy can pass or any sabbatical officer can take up their position.
Thank you. And George, please.
So I'm just going to re-emphasize my main point. So nights out for you. I think nights out are such an integral part of people's first few weeks at university, and they spend it in the copper rooms, which isn't really representative of what people do. So I would love to get students involved in making those decisions, and I think across the board, students need to be more involved, especially with the development side and the event side of the work that the SU does.
Thank you, George. Last but not least, Luke, please.
What I want to change most is a reminder of what the priorities and principles of a students' union are. I think we do so much, it's very easy for us to lose sight of the fact that the one thing that unites all students on campus is their education. We currently don't demonstrate that is our main priority as a students' union, so I want to make sure we can do that by dedicating more staff time to education and raising the awareness that the SU is there for you, whatever your needs are.
Thank you. So now we will open it to the floor. So if you do have a question to ask, please raise your hand. Right, can we have Jenny, please?
Don't worry, I'm not going to bang on about accessibility again. But I just want to say, so some of you in particular have a lot of points in your manifesto of what you want to achieve, but as president, you'll be really busy with emails and meetings and meetings and meetings. So how are you planning to achieve all of the things that you want to do in your manifesto whilst doing all of the things that you need to do in your role as president and still being able to engage with your students?
Right. Shall we start with George on the question? Yeah.
So this is something that I did as Societies Officer in term 1 this year and had opening hours. I tried it, but then it got a bit much when I had queues outside my door for people. So I think maybe myself and maybe the other SABs, if I were to be elected, to just maybe sit in the terrace bar for a couple of hours on one evening, maybe like on a Friday, 5 till 7. And then people can come and talk to us and we can be engaging and accessible in that way, because all day is spent in meetings and doing emails. I think 5 till 7 might be a more accessible time that people can come and ask us questions and see what we're doing.
Thank you, George. Luke, please.
Comes back a little bit to priorities again, making sure I know what my goals are, making sure I know what progress I'm hoping to achieve that day is going to get me out of bed, passionate about what the work I'm going to do that day, and making sure I'm, again, working with the right students as well. We've got a fantastic group of elected execs this year who are fantastic and small and action-oriented. It's important that we're making sure we're engaging them and we're working with them to make sure we can achieve all our goals.
Thank you, Luke. And Remington.
I know a lot of great people, and they're going to help me make Warwick SU great again. But also, I'd like to see the President's workload reduced, and by that I mean I want to make it much harder to pass policies, which just frankly are a waste of time, take out our resources, and don't achieve anything, which is why I want to see the threshold for policy passing to be raised way up.
Thank you, Remington. So do we have another question from the floor? Isaac, please. Yeah.
So, as president, you'll be chair of the board of trustees as well, which is kind of a separate role. So I was going to ask a question about something that one of you will probably face in the upcoming year. So there's been a lot of talk about the SU having the Living Wage Foundation, paying all staff to the Living Wage Foundation, which ethically I think would obviously be a good thing to do. But were you to do that, it might mean that prices have to go up in other areas, such as food, drink, maybe the nights out. So basically, a bit of a mean question. If it came to that kind of scale, whereabouts are you on that scale? Which one of those is more important to you and why?
All right, a question on the living wage. So we'll start with Luke.
For me, it's the ethical side of things. We have so many dedicated staff in the SU who work so much overtime as well, and they are integral to functioning of the students' union, integral for making so much change in students' lives. But it doesn't have to be about that dichotomy of where we have to make cuts and increase costs. We need to be thinking outside the box about where we can mitigate those changes, mitigate those circumstances, and that's something very feasible because we have such intelligent and dedicated people in the union already.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Luke. And we have Remington.
First, I just want to say I think you're great, so thank you, inspiration. But secondly, thanks to this Tory government, there is going to be a living wage which is going to be enforced by law, so we can't do anything about it. But rather than make students suffer by rising prices even further, I'd like to see whether there's a bit of fat on the edges of the SU that can be cut. So I go for austerity.
All right. Thank you, Remington. Thank you. So, George, please.
For me, it's not about what I think. I think we need to be asking students what they think. We've got hundreds of student staff who this would directly affect. It would affect their wage. It would affect the cost of their lunch. And it's not up to me what students want. Do they want a more expensive baguette, or do they want the people that work in the terrace bar to be paid more? I wouldn't want to make that decision, and I think discussions need to be had on how we can consult students, so our student staff and the wider student body, however that takes place, that needs to happen.
Thank you, George. Do we have another question from the floor? Yes, Ollie, please.
Hi there. As president, you have a real chance to steer the course of the SU and even the university for years to come. So being ambitious and going beyond your manifesto, where do you want this SU to be in 5 years' time?
So 5-year goal. So this question will start with Remington.
Well, I think that what I want I can achieve in 1 year, and I want it to be great again. And I think we're going to be the greatest university in the the greatest SU in the whole country, perhaps even the whole world. And I've outlined how I'm going to do this, but that is my pretty humble vision, and I'm confident that I'm going to be able to achieve it.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Remington. We'll have Josh next.
When you said that, my first thought was I would love a different building. I would love a more engaging building. I think SUHQ and this SU building being separate isn't great. I would love to see it all in one big, engaging environment where students could go to and chill out and engage in different ways. And then also, coming from a society point of view, I would love to see not necessarily more stuff happen, but just better. So I don't think we need to do more. I'd rather see more depth and do what we do even better and really double down on that.
Thank you, George. And Luke?
In 5 years, I want to see the SU doing what it does now, but more on a bigger scale. I want to see us having complete representation at every university committee and making it much faster for us to bring change. I also want to make sure that we are representing students and we're campaigning entirely and that we're managing to support every single student who comes to us with an issue. And then making sure we don't just represent the 25,000 students who are on campus every day, but the other 24,000 that make the 44,000 on satellite campuses as well, and taking their views into account.
Thank you, Luke. Do we have another question from the floor? Last chance for any question from the floor? Okay. I think there's another audience who has a question.
The library, SU, and all the halls currently only use single-ply toilet paper. Would any of the candidates like to commit right here to upgrade that to double-ply or even triple-ply toilet paper?
Thank you for your question. So a question on the toilet paper. This question we will start with George.
Thank you for bringing this up. I think it's a really, really important issue. I think this would make a great policy to ASM and really we can see what students think. Do they care that much about doing that?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And Luke, your response?
All I would say to that is to quote Ollie Rice and say, why aim for the moon when you can shoot for the stars, and go for a quadruple ply? Why not?
Right, thank you. And Remington?
I think the fact that people are laughing at that question just shows what an unserious process the entire SU has become. And I hear what you're saying, and I agree. If you have a sore bum, you're not going to be happy. That's bad for welfare. That's bad for your academic attainment. You're not going to want to get involved in societies. You're not going to go and campaign against capitalism if you have a sore bum. So I fully endorse that, and I want to have you on board on my team. Thank you.
Bringing to an end this evening's question time and obviously the President's section. So a round of applause for our proposed candidates, for Luke, for Remington Spa and for George. There we go. That is it for tonight. Obviously the vote opens Wednesday at 9 o'clock, so you have your chance to have your say, and you can also join us on Friday night at 9:30, where we will have all the live coverage of the results as they are announced exclusively, as well the first interviews with your new Warwick SU team. So join myself, Niall, and Julia Friday night at 9:30 for the pre-show and the main show beginning at 10. Have a lovely evening. We'll see you then. Night.